Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Adrian's Digital Basement 2. It's time for a super mini mail call. I know there's just been a ton of these, but it's because I'm trying to get through all these packages that are down here, and it's gonna take a while. Because the rate I'm going now, it's like 2 packages per mail call episode, and there's still an hour, and I should count up the number that I have unopened, but there's probably 40 in there. They're all the little ones that are left, although I have a couple big ones back there. I should probably open those as well. Anyhow, we have a package here from Henry in Bremerton, Washington. So that's just up I-5, not far from Portland, kind of up the road from here. So hi to all my Washington viewers. Opening this up. Let's see what we have here. Ooh, you know, I think I know what this is. I think this is for the Apple II. Right. Thanks for purchasing the ROM X. This actually was sent to me by Jeff Mazur, who is the person that actually designed and created this particular product. There's an invoice in here from Reactive Micro, and they're a company that sell a lot of Apple II products, and I think Jeff contacted them and had them send me one of these ROM X's. Now, what a ROM X is, if you're not familiar with it, is an awesome menu-driven ROM switcher for the Apple II line of computers. And there's a version for the II Plus and another one for the IIe, and I think there might be one for the IIc as well. But what's really cool is you can switch the ROMs on the fly, but you can also switch the character set ROM as well. And I think that's facilitated by a separate little board that plugs into the motherboard in the character ROM socket and a little ribbon cable that goes between the 2 ROMs, or maybe just a wire or something like that. I haven't actually used any of these, and Jeff went ahead and sent me the II Plus version, which I definitely have. I think I've shown it on a mail call previously. So looking at the invoice here, this actually is the ROM X for the Apple II and the II Plus. So that's right here on this little thing. We'll take a look at that in a second. And a ROM X 128 RAM card, which is something that plugs into slot 0, also on the II and the II Plus, to give you, well, additional RAM, obviously. So I think it takes the place of the language card, and then it gives you additional banks of memory beyond just that extra 16K to bring your 48K machine up to 64K. I wanted to show that inside the box here was an ad for Attack of the Pesky Robots by David Murray, and I didn't realize that there are actual interface cards for the Apple II that allow you to plug in SNES controllers directly into the machine, of course, for use with Attack of the Pesky Robots. I'm not familiar with anything besides this game that support the SNES controllers plugged in this way, but it'd be sweet if some older games got patched, modified, hacked, whatever, to support SNES, so you didn't have to use the analog joystick switch on the Apple II I don't love. Looks like we have another thing here for Juiced GS, keeping the Apple II community current since 1996. Get your annual subscription for 20 bucks. Looks like there's a book as well that sort of goes over Apple II history, 565 pages of it. And on the back of this, the Retro Roundup, one-stop source for classic computing and retro video game news. Apple II, Atari, Mac, and Tandy, RetroRoundup.com, and the Opus 2, the ultimate collection of 8 and 16-bit Apple II program applications and libraries with manuals and source code. Learn from professional programmers and develop your own Apple II software. A million lines of code, 35 commercial 8 and 16-bit applications, software 25 bucks, source code $25, or both for $40. And there's a URL there, juice.gs. Okay, so it's so that seems to be part of this right here. And on the back of the Pesky Robots paper, we have a few other things as well. Pretty sure this is a reproduction Transwarp GS, Apple II Plus replica mainboard, RamWorks 3, micro drive, so there you go, compact flash card for the Apple II line of computers. The CFFA 3000, this is also a flash card. You put a compact flash in there, allows you to change disks via menus and stuff. It's pretty cool. I actually have one of these cards. They were made back in the day, and then they went end of life due to the fact that I think one of the chips on there, like a CPLD or whatever, was really hard to find. So I think it's been redesigned. So a chip that is available right now can be used on it. So I actually bought one of these more recent runs, and crazy thing is I've had it for, I don't know, 2 years or something like that, and I haven't even tried it yet because there's other solutions now for booting the Apple II disk images. Originally, it felt like the CFFA 3000 was kind of the card for the Apple II to allow you to do that, but then Booty and all these other things have come out since that kind of allow similar functionality. Although I don't think anything is really as capable of a CFFA 3000 because there's an external button you can have that can allow you to switch discs while the game is running. So if you got to like flip to the other side and stuff like that, that's something that it's really good at doing. As far as I'm aware, I've seen them in operation. I know other people with them, but I haven't used the one that I bought personally. And there's an A2N20. The A2FPGA is primarily an HDMI video and sound card for the 2 Plus, and 2E, and also the 2GS. It brings classic Apple II experience to any monitor or television. I'm not super familiar with this thing versus the Apple II DVI card that I showed on the channel recently. Of course, that card is not a sound card. It just takes the stock video that's on your Apple II and then outputs that over DVI, which means you can plug it into an HDMI monitor and it works as well. This says, though, that it also is a sound card. Now, it kind of goes without saying because this is not using a Raspberry Pi Pico and it probably has an FPGA on it. It's probably significantly more expensive. And it does sound kind of curious. I wonder if it basically emulates the mocking board, which there's a replica here. So it takes this, puts that in an FPGA, and does all the bus snooping to recreate the video over HDMI. Theoretically, you could also snoop the bus and recreate the Apple II beep speaker over the expansion bus, because to activate sound using the beep speaker on the Apple II, you just sort of hit a particular memory location. Anytime you access it, you get a little tick out of the speaker. So to create a tone, you just repeatedly hit it to create the tones, and that could be picked up over the bus, just like the video can. And so that sound card might do mocking board and the beep speaker. Okay, well, let's take a look at these things here. So one thing about the ROM X here is it has a battery holder now. And they sent me a battery here. So this must have a real-time clock in here. Now, I guess I was mistaken that this came with the character ROM or character generator add-on, which I think connects with this ROM link cable here. So it's a separate little board, plugs into the character ROM socket, and then you connect that up here. And so you can see that this connects up right here to the motherboard as well. This IC, I think, is doing all the ROM selection to the various ROM sockets on the Apple II Plus. Let's look at this little RAM card here. So there it is, the ROM X 128. So this is a pretty new design. You can see here it's August 2024. We're version 1.0. So this is a bit what I was talking about, is there are additional banks of memory now. So that 16K on the original language card is now replicated multiple times. And I guess there are banks 0 through 7. So you got these 3 LEDs to represent that. It tells you here if it's being written to or read from. And it looks like you can control some of this stuff, like turn the LEDs off if you want. I don't know what reset mode is, and something to do with DMA with these 2 switches here. Very nice PCB though, where you have the ENG coating here, so it's not going to wear off or anything. And it looks like it even has the beveled edge right there, so it's not going to harm your slot contacts, which theoretically is a thing. If you get a PCB that doesn't have that, you can just take some sandpaper and just sand it down yourself. We got a little paper here. Thanks for purchasing ROM X. Here is the installation instruction, the ROM exchange. Let's go take a look at that. All right, as of September 2024, the ROM X 128 is available for order at reactivemicro.com. It's a Saturn 128K compatible RAM card, so it has to do with the way the bank switching works, those additional banks, and the first RAM upgrade from JD Micro. See the blog entry for more details. Well, there it is, and that's the DRAM, and it's some kind of a CPLD that's doing the select logic. And then here's the new ROM X Plus. I think that's the difference here. We have the Plus version, which adds this additional real-time clock functionality, I think. We'll have to look up exactly what the ROM X Plus does over the old ROM X, which, to be honest, I got to go find it and test that out as well. And it looks like there's a ROM X 2C Plus as well, which I guess is a variant of this for the 2C. And as you can see, it's got the battery on there as well. And there's also a ROM XE 2E, and this does have the EF adapter. I think there are 2 ROM sockets on the 2E, and because there's no simple TTL logic chip that's doing the chip select lines like there's on the 2 Plus, you actually have to have 2 chips installed in the board. And here's the ROM 2C back from 2021, and it also has the battery on it. So I need to go learn exactly what's the difference between the Plus version that's new and these original versions. Okay, so I'm over on Reactive Micro's website, and here is an awesome little conversion or comparison chart between the two versions, the original ROM X and the new X Plus. So it allows you to store 15 ROM images. You can upload them instantly. I think you can do that from the computer itself. I don't think you need to do it like, don't have to take it out of the computer and do it externally. Option to display a boot menu at ROM, so lets you pick what ROM you want to run. You can control the character ROM. That's an optional add-on for both of these. That requires that separate little font thing I was talking about. Works in many 2+ clones. And you can see that it says little note number 1, any motherboard with standard chip spacing and single NH inversion. That has to do with the logic chip that is on the motherboard. And I know my clone that I made a bunch of videos on does not have the right spacing to use either of these. Oddly enough, it seems that the X Plus works in most 2+ clones as opposed to many. So I guess there's additional compatibility with this. Now, one of the things that the ROM X Plus adds is ProDOS disk support. Now, I'm vaguely recalling what this means is with DOS 3.3, you can actually have like a DOS boot disk in the little ROM module here, and it will boot a virtual disk basically and drop you into DOS, but it was only DOS 3.3 on the original one, and now it can do ProDOS and DOS 3.3. Looks like this one added the real-time clock and backup battery and file timestamping in ProDOS, so it automatically registers the clock with ProDOS, so even if you boot a disk or whatever, then the calendar is set automatically. SRAM, battery backed up SRAM, can use 12K, 16K, and 32K images. I'm not sure if that means the disk images or what that means exactly. Emulates the INT-CX ROM soft switch. Do I know what that is? No. And the minimum RAM configuration on the original is 4K, which was a possible config on the very earliest Apple IIs, and I guess the new one requires a bit more memory. So here's a screenshot of the boot menu itself, and you notice here Apple I emulation. So yeah, there's a ROM that you can load that makes the Apple II really behave like an Apple I. There's also a diagnostics ROM, and there's a memory test utility as well in here. Like you have some disks you can boot, Copy 2+, ProDOS. So I think this is really the ROM 2X feature, right? That it could load ProDOS, DOS 3.3 fast loader. And then, of course, you have the different ROMs, like AppleSoft Basic, just the stock one. You can get lowercase support, integer basic, I don't know what the different features here, and then the other versions of integer basic with different features and stuff. Here it is inside a 2+, so you remove all of the ROMs. Well, this is an original ROM X. Install it in that socket, and you take out the TTL logic chip next to it, and it goes into both. And then this is that character set changer as well. What's cool about having the character set changer is, for instance, if you're trying to use the Apple IIJ Plus ROM, which is the Japanese version of the Apple II, of course it has some Japanese character set support. In addition, I know there's a bunch of like other fonts you can load into the Apple II Plus, like lowercase and stuff like that, and that is all possible when you actually have this optional module. And there's that character set ROM right there, and this is the keyboard connection down on the edge of the motherboard. And then this 2+ has a language card installed in it, but of course if you use this Saturn compatible card, you don't need to, well, have a language card, and then of course you can also skip this little connection here going down to the motherboard. This connection only facilitates, well, simpler design on the card here. Otherwise the card would have to handle doing the refreshing and whatnot of the DRAM, and what it does is it just hijacks the refreshing that happens right on the motherboard here with that signaling, and it just simplifies the design of the card. I forgot if I said, but the ROM X Plus costs $80 here from Reactive Micro. And here's what I was talking about. It says you can turn on your computer and immediately have DOS 3.3 or ProDOS loaded right from ROM. That's pretty cool. Let's just quickly take a look at the installation guide. I want to know how to do this properly. Incidentally, there are two versions of the character set ROM replacer for the Apple II Plus line of computers. There's a version for Rev 7 motherboards, which I think is the very last revision, RFI, I think it's called as well. That's just a single little solution here, but there's another version for pre-Rev 7. Looks like you have to replace some additional logic stuff as well. Looks like you have to remove the ROM at F11 and the ROM next to it, F12. I don't know if you need to remove the rest of the ROMs. And yeah, it says right here, the remaining ROMs are disabled. To save power heat, you can optionally remove those. They're not going to do anything because they're never going to be selected, because that F12 chip is the one that generates the select lines, and it's not in the motherboard anymore. And the rest of this is just instructions on how to install the character ROM stuff. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go grab an Apple II Plus, a real one, not a clone, And I'm also going to go look for the original ROM X that Jeff sent me and see if he also sent me the character ROM thing with that. I can't remember. Okay, I brought down an Apple II Plus. This is the one that I did a whole bunch of repair on the main channel, I think a number of years ago at this point. Now, I don't actually quite remember what's even in this computer. So this is an Apple II Plus. It's an A2S1048. So that means it was a 48K model sold by Apple. And you'll notice that it's got these marks on the top here. Whoever stored this thing before I got it, obviously, some kind of a, well, the case is painted. So the fact that there's like some discoloration, except where the feet of the floppy drives that were probably sitting on top of this were stored, there was something in the environment that actually turned the color of the paint darker, except where the feet were. And unfortunately, one of the other things about this computer is whoever stacked the floppy drives on here had the front feet sort of hanging off, and the screw, there's some screws on the bottom of the floppy drive, and obviously when you have the feet sitting on the computer, the screw's not even touching the plastic, but the feet were obviously like hanging over here, and the screw there scratched the case, as did this one here. Oh, you can see where one of the feet were, so I guess, I don't know, of this floppy drive here, because it was pushed back a little bit further, so the feet there were hanging. Anyways, there's a foot mark there, and there's a bit of a scratch in the case there and there. And that was the way this computer came. And I remember the whole computer was really, really dirty. I had to do a very, very thorough cleaning on this. And this does have an RFI motherboard, so the last revision, because actually I went into my stuff and I found a note here from Jeff. This was from previously. Hey, Adrian, here's a ROM X for your 2 Plus. If you can locate the inverter on your clone board that uses the EPROM, you can also try it on that as well. And I remember talking with Jeff about that, and unfortunately, it wasn't compatible. So here it is. This is the original ROM X, and Jeff had sent me the character ROM as well. So that's awesome. And I'm pretty sure that I can pair that with the new ROM X Plus here. I think everything is compatible, at least with the character generator here. So the ROM X Plus here has the battery connector on it, and the same connector here. This is that little cable that goes to this. And I guess we'll start with the original ROM X, and then we'll move up to the Plus. So the big question is, does this Apple II Plus still work after, well, years of sitting on the shelf? It's always a gamble when things have been sitting, whether they're gonna work still. And you know, the funny thing is, I'm not even sure what's even in this computer right now. I see stuff hanging out of the back here. This is obviously an 80 column card, I think, and we have a couple other ports there. Let's pop the cover off on here and see what's inside. Wow, well, this thing is relatively fully loaded. So we have a VidX clone 80 column card. I think I bought this off eBay. This is the auto switcher module. So essentially we'll auto switch between 80 columns and 40 columns. So if you're in 80 column mode and then you switch to a graphics mode, for instance, this detects that and then we'll switch back to the 40 column output. And this little cable here is plugged into this module here, and it picks up the video signal off the motherboard with this little cable right there down to that connector. This connection that's hanging out here is for the disk controller in slot 6, so it's the standard Apple IIe style connector. I have a feeling this is a CPM card here. Oh, no, that's just another floppy drive card, okay. So this one here is the CPM card. I don't know why I thought that smaller one was. There we go. This is the Microsoft soft card, so the original Z80 card. Definitely have a little bit of oxidation there on that connector. This computer has an original Microsoft RAM card here, language card that is, and it does connect up to the motherboard there, so we'll just leave that in, well, I'll just let it sit there for a second. Super serial card here, so that would allow you to use a modem, ADB Pro, stuff like that. And then here is that VidX clone 80 column card that I was talking about. I remember I found this thing off eBay for very cheap because I think it was listed incorrectly as something else, but I recognized it as what it is, which is the VidX clone. So we have CRTC, the inverse font, and it says VidX fixed here because I think I never made a video about this, but I actually altered the parameter table in this so that the CRTC output video that more closely matched the video of the motherboard, because the original VidX card, or at least whatever ROM was on this thing, the video that came out of this actually Well, these fonts support lowercase, so they have descenders. So like the letter G, for instance, lowercase g has the little thing that goes down below the line. So because of that, it was rendering the fonts with more scan lines than the Apple II does, which text was taking up more space, so it'd be chopped off on the top and bottom. So, okay, well anyway, what did I do on this thing for the repair? I think I had to fix this transceiver I see here, and I had to create a little adapter to use a 74LS245, because this is a different part, but then I eventually found the original part, and it's tested with a little check mark there. I think I had to change the CPU socket, and some of the other sockets were flaky on this as well. I see all the original RAM has Apple logos on it, so that's cool. It's all original. And this is the last revision of the motherboard, absolutely without a doubt, so I can use the character ROM in this. It's down there below the keyboard. And the one funny little thing I did with this is I noticed there was a lot of jail bars on the video output of this. And it turned out the fix, you can just see it there. See how there's a little gloop of solder there? What ended up happening is Apple, for, I don't know, reasons, I guess, they separated the ground plane of the video section of the board from the rest of the board. And for whatever reason, I found that created a lot of jail bars on the video. And by scratching away the solder mask and reconnecting those ground planes actually fixed the jail bars. So the first thing I really need to do here is we got to see if this computer is even working, because I'm slightly doubtful that this thing is still going to work. And I can't really say why I think it's doubtful that this works, but I don't know. Let's just plug this in. I've already definitely changed out the reefer, removed the reefer. I didn't put a note on this power supply that I did that, so I don't love that. Let's turn this on and see if we at least hear the beep out of the computer. Okay, that's a good sign. So that means it's at least initializing basic. Okay, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get this hooked up to the video capture device so we can validate what's working on this Apple II Plus and what is not. All right, I'm going to use the RGB to HDMI for capture. I have the version that has composite input, so this is actually connected right to the motherboard here. I'm not going to plug into the 80 column output cable, and that's because the profile that's on the RGB HDMI is expecting the Apple II video and not the 80 column video. So if I switch to 80 columns, it would have a problem anyways. But if we just exit out of the menu here and we turn on the computer, let's see what happens. Oh, okay, that looks good. Let's hit Control Reset. Cool. This, yep, so we're getting, look at that, not working super great. So remember on the Apple II Plus, I know you can't see the keyboard, but if I hold down the E key, nothing happens. There's a repeat button, which isn't working either. So we have a bunch of bad switches on this thing. How wonderful. Okay, I did a little bit of testing, and turns out that the I key is flaky. It's like you either get one or you get a whole bunch of key pushes. The L key doesn't work. Okay, if I push it a bunch of times, it's starting to work now. And the repeat key doesn't work at all. No, maybe if I push it a bunch of times, it might start working. No, it doesn't seem to work at all. Funny thing is, I'm not surprised at all that there are some problems with the keys on this, because I remember when I worked on this machine, I think I had to swap a bunch of the key switches because there was just so much grime and dirt all over this entire machine. But more than that, I didn't have enough switches at the time to fix all of the bad keys, and I ended up dripping some Deoxit into the switches themselves and hoping that would fix it. And I remember the last time I was actually using this thing, that some of the keys, if I let the machine sit for several days, they would not work properly. And that seems to be what's going on with these three switches. Luckily, much time has passed, and I have a whole bunch of the Alps SKCC switches that this thing uses. Yes, this is a mechanical Alps keyboard, so it should be no problem to get this thing working in the fast. But that's not the scope of this video. The scope of this video is to take a look at these ROM X's. So I think the first thing I need to do is I'm going to put in the original ROM X, and I'm going to install the video ROM replacement. And then once this works, we'll upgrade to the new ROM X and take a look at those capabilities. And then, oh, and I guess in the process, I'll remove the Microsoft RAM card that's in here, and I'm going to stick in this 128K RAM card. First thing that has to happen, besides turning the computer off, of course, is I'm going to need to remove the top cover. And that's because to access the video ROM or the character ROM, it is like around here, and is really no way to get to that, and that's because this keyboard has like this encoder board on it and stuff like that. You just can't reach the chip. I can see it down there, my finger's on it, but the only way to get to it is to fully take the top cover off, which takes the keyboard off. And with this particular machine, to do it, I have to remove these cards here, because like the Super Serial card here has this little thing on it that is the port holder, and of course every time you take that off it scratches the paint, but that is what it is. And what's this one here? This is, oh, a joystick port. So there's the joystick port on the 2 Plus, and this thing here gives us a 9-pin version of it. Kind of fancy, isn't it? So I'm just going to leave this in here and take the 80 column card out. It does have a little key in there, so when I put this back on, it goes back on the correct way. So on this board, there's one RAM chip that would be from the motherboard. It's this one right here. So I'm going to pop this off here, and we need to reinstall the original RAM chip, and that's because, of course, we don't need this little ribbon cable. Look at that, TI RAM chips. Look at all the corrosion and tarnishing on the pins you get on these Texas Instruments. Oh, it's a MOSTEC. Okay, the MOSTEC does it too. MOSTEC and TI, you both get tons of tarnishing on the pins. I don't know how bad that is. Like, is that something that causes connectivity issues? You can see these are all tarnished like that. It's like a silver plating that's tarnished. I'm sure some silver polish would take that off, but anyhow, weird thing is that's an Apple chip, but MOSTEC branded. Are the other chips MOSTEC? No, these are all NECs. They're all tarnished as well. So TIs are usually the ones that tarnish, but I guess NECs do as well. So that's curious that we have one Apple branded MOSTEC chip. You know probably why that is. I think when I got this computer, it was just missing that RAM chip altogether. And I found this board here on eBay, and I think it had the RAM chip already installed there, the Apple RAM chip. So someone, when they bought this Microsoft card from 1980, you can see the old Microsoft logo there, consumer products, they must have removed the RAM chip, which was MOSTEC with the Apple brand, from their Apple II, and they stuck it onto this board in this random location. All right, so to take this apart, I just need to slide that thing off as well. I'm gonna have to flip this over. We gotta take the screws out. And that was one of the other things I remember about this machine, is the screws were very, very rusty, or some of them were at least. And these are obviously not the original screws anymore. These look like more like PC case screws. But that's because that's what I had to use. And I think this one isn't even machined. Yeah, this is like going into the plastic, because I think something broke there, if I recall. I'll put a link in the description to the original repair series for this computer. It was a lot of work, but it was still very fun. And that's because, of course, I love working on these old machines. And at the time, this was the first Apple II Plus I had ever had in my collection since having one as a child. In the house, that is. We had one of these when I was just a little kid. Alrighty, so there it is. And I'll just carefully lay that there, make sure nothing is attached anymore, and I can lift this up. Let me turn this sideways so you can kind of see what I'm doing. The keyboard is connected with a very short ribbon cable. Actually, it's not that short on this one, and actually interesting, it has that on there. I don't recall ever seeing that. That must be something to do with the RFI, or like the interference suppression that Apple felt they had to do to try to pass FCC rules. So we lift this up, pull it away, and there is the awesome Apple II motherboard. 2 and 2 Plus is all the same. Looks like this thing already has lowercase character generator on it. Is this an EPROM? That's kind of funny. I don't quite recall installing that. Anyhow, I just pop this out, and we can see here it says ROM Special. So that's what's the important thing for installing the aftermarket ROM X one, and it needs to be SPSL, or special. And like I said, if it's the earlier version, there's a different pinout, and it has to use the other one that has some other extra chips over here, right, or extra pins over there. There's no notch on this socket, and so I drew it on the board because I was obviously fiddling around with it at some point. So this board has a little notch there, and these are nice thin pins as well. They're the type that are designed to go into these sockets without causing any damage. There we go. Now Jeff has a little line on there. It's kind of hard to see, but there's a little white line on there, and I think that has to line up with the red line on this ribbon cable here. So we'll do, oh, I should have put this on first, because this chip right here makes it kind of impossible to do that. So let's get this up. Okay, put this back down. And then as far as the replacement ROM goes, this has to come out. This is the chip that is going to be replaced right here. So we'll put that there. And this little IC that's right next to it. So we'll pop that one out as well. And here's the original ROM X board, not the Plus, just the regular ROM X board. Okay. And I have the ribbon cable connected. It's not in focus there. There it goes. A faint pink line there, lined up to that white line there. And there it is. ROM X is installed into the spot where the ROM was, and that one IC, this is the 80 column switcher thing, so that just can stay right there. Let's just make sure that it is in all the way. Oh, it was a bit loose actually. It's nice that it doesn't interfere though with the ROM X board or anything like that. All right, so we can test this just sitting here on the bench exactly like this. Oh, I suppose we can pop this 80 column card in here, front of the computer that way. So we just pop this in here to slot 0, 80 column card I called it, no, RAM board or language card. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna apply power without connecting the keyboard or anything. I guess we can hook the video up here. And we should hear a beep when I turn this on, if everything is hooked up correctly. Just double checking, yep, notch is the right way. Here we go. Ah, we got no beep. Oh, we got a beep, it just took a long time. And there we have it. I'm wondering if we had a boot menu of some kind that popped up. Let's power this thing off and on again and see if we see a boot menu. Oh, not that time at least. Okay, well anyways, great sign. A couple things we have going for us. We have working character ROMs. We know that that part of this module is working, and we have a working system. So therefore we know that the ROM X is working as well. And these other ROM chips now are just in for the ride. They're not actually doing anything at all. They're gonna get a little bit warm, but that's it. So to do any further testing, I'm gonna have to just put the keyboard or reconnect the keyboard, just sort of lay that on top of the computer here, so at least I can type. Okay, I think everything's connected correctly here. Interesting. So that was that delay from that power on that we saw. And I wonder if that's like the ROM X booting up or something. I don't know. And I have no idea how to get into the ROM X here. Obviously, control reset doesn't do anything. All right, so according to the manual, when you first power on the computer, you should get a boot menu, and it says press escape key to stop the countdown timer. If your computer does not display the menu, check your monitor connection before checking the ROM X module is correctly installed. Press 1 to boot AppleSoft Basic. If you have the optional ROM, try pressing 2 for lowercase. This is what we have here, and of course if I power it off and on, oh, there we go, so escape. Weird, I'm not, I swear when I first turned this on and I had the video connected, I saw just sort of like garbage on the screen, but clearly this is what we have going on. Well, let's try lowercase, and look, we have lowercase. The font looks a little bit different than what I'm used to. Sorry, the camera's in the way here, which is why I have to kind of look around it. Now, I don't have a lowercase mod on this Apple II Plus, so there's no way for me to type lowercase or anything. It just clearly does support it. And we reset this thing again, and we hit escape. This is obviously very old firmware. You can see the date is 2020. I don't know how long I've had this. This is the original ROM X. Jeff sent it to me so long ago, and obviously I've been very lackadaisical about testing it out. Let's power cycle this again here. Ah, that's what I'm talking about. The garbage that we're seeing sometimes. So I think if I push 1, oh no, it's just like frozen. Hit control reset. That could easily be that I didn't let the computer stay off for long enough, and the RAM is just retaining some information, which is causing the computer to kind of crash. But no, that time, it just went straight into AppleSoft Basic. And now, why is the cursor an underline? I don't understand what we're looking at here. Yeah, I'm a little confused as to what's happening here. Let's try this again. Okay, that time we saw the little bit of garbage, then the ROM initialized. Okay, anyways, let's try the Apple IIJ Plus, that is 8. Oh, maybe that's what I was somehow running in. I wonder if there's like a way to display kanji characters with the J Plus. I actually have no idea how that works exactly. The shift key doesn't possibly work. Like the shift mod goes from the keyboard to the joystick port for one of the enunciators, and that allows the machine to know you're holding the shift key down. Otherwise, the shift key is only simply used for the encoder that's on the keyboard itself to give you a 5 or say the % symbol. Oh, wait, there it was. Wait, I did control something. Control T. Ah, look, Japanese characters on an Apple II. What? That's so cool. I think it was T, right? That's what I said. Call -151. Oh, neat. So cool. Control T. That goes back. Yeah, so that lets you switch. You could switch in the middle of typing too. So theoretically here, I can go 10. I don't have all the keys working, I don't think, but there's that I key misbehaving. Print. Hello. There, I typed Adrian with the Japanese symbols. And I'll put black for my last name there. And now we hit run. There we go. So this would only be possible because we have the Japanese character ROM running right now, in addition to the Apple II or J Plus ROMs, courtesy of the ROM X. And let's try Apple I emulation. So there we go, 9. Okay, this is normal. I think you have to press Control Reset. No, there's something you have to do when there we go. I feel like this is weird. I think this is an RGB to HDMI issue. I don't know, actually. Like it's like there's a problem with it syncing to the video signal. That does look like the Apple I, which I think you just get a slash with an @ symbol, something like that. But why is it rolling? What's funny to me is I'm quite sure that the entire timing of the video is generated in hardware, not in software on the Apple II. So there's nothing, there's nothing that the Apple I ROM could do to output like a rolling image like that. It's kind of strange. Let's try this diagnostics here. Okay, RAM test A. Oh, okay. This is a sync issue. Okay, that's odd. I feel like while it's in graphics mode, there's a sync problem. I think there's a fault on this motherboard. And I don't know, or the RGB to HDMI is I don't know. Anyways, no RAM issues. That would be just with the motherboard RAM here. I don't think this is testing the extended memory at all. Let's test the ROM test. Hello, this is ROM X. I'm okay, thanks for asking. Keyboard test. Okay, let's do color bars. Let's see, this, yeah, that's a mess. So I'm wondering if the Apple I emulation is actually using the graphics mode and that's causing this particular issue. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually connect up to the RetroTink, and let's see if the RetroTink is getting a sync off this color image. Oh, it is. Okay. I don't know. This is just something with the profile on the RGB to HDMI, and it's plugged into the composite video, and I don't really know how that stuff all works. This looks more normal. Those colors look correct. And of course the text is way fuzzier, but that is completely understandable. Let's reset this thing. Let's see. Oh, there's that problem again. Let's try again. There we go. And I'm going to hit escape and we'll do number 9 for the emulation again. There we go. Okay. So it is running in graphics mode. Very odd that the emulation works that way. But the fact there's color fringing is telling us that. And I'm thinking actually that the color burst was probably confusing the analog digitizer that's on the RGB to HDMI. That makes more sense now. That's why anytime the color burst was enabled that we were having that problem. I have no idea how to use anything to do with the Apple I. The Apple I, of course, is using the normal text mode, but maybe the character generator looks a bit different. Okay, so that's memory location 0. So maybe to replicate the font exactly, they're using the graphics mode here, whoever wrote this ROM. Look at the scrolling, it's really slow, and that's of course because it's running in high res mode here. I wonder if I enter data by putting like 8:12. Oh yeah, that worked actually. So it showed the original value FE, and now when I look at location 8, I'm getting a 12. Anyways, I'm stumbling around like I have the lights turned off. What we can validate for sure is that this ROM X is working perfectly. I'm wondering what the latest firmware is that I can get for it. So I'm looking around on the JD Micro website here. So we have the installation guides, and I was following, well, I guess I was following the ROM X Plus installation guide, even though this is a regular ROM X. I don't actually see the ROM X installation guide anymore. So maybe it's deprecated because this is an older product. But what I thought maybe existed was a way to do like firmware updates with these, but I don't think that's necessarily the case. And interesting is like, this is the user guide for these various products, ROM C, C+, E+, and the ROM X text video ROM, but there's nothing for the ROM X. That's what we have in this machine here. I must be missing something. It says here, this guide is for firmware 1.2.0. If you have an older firmware, we recommend updating it using the guide. If we turn the machine off and back on again, let's see if we can get a version number out of this thing. All right, we hit I, there it is. Firmware version 0.992. All right, in the manual here it says, for updating the firmware, this is like updating a ROM image. It just, I think it's essentially slot 0, which is how on this one when I hit I, it showed up as a slot 0, with slot 1 being the default boot ROM for this thing. Looks like we have a system utility disk that I hopefully can find. Question is this disk image is right here that says it's for the 2X, 2C+, XE, X+, the actual work with this original X device. Guess there's only one way to find out. Let's try it. All right, I have the floppy EMU connected and I copied the system utility disk on here. So we're gonna hit 1. Are we in Apple II mode? Yes, we are. Okay, I have the disk selected. I think it's booting now. There it is, ProDOS. ROM X board not found, clock driver not installed. Okay, well that answers that question, that this ROM X, I guess, is not updatable using this firmware. All right, well I think that just means we're gonna take this one out and swap over to the newer one. I'll send an email over to Jeff, this is after I make this video here, and I will find out about how to do the update on this ROM X board. I'm sure it's possible. There's got to be a way. And I might as well install the battery into here. So we'll just put this here for now. Careful not to bend any of the pins. I'm just looking at the way the battery should go in. I presume the positive should be up. It'd be nice if there were a little mark on the board to say that though. Even if there was just a positive right here next to this thing here. All right, just quickly check the documentation and yeah, you have the plus facing up. So it goes in like so. Double check these pins are all good. They're pretty good. They're a little wavy, but I don't think that's going to cause an issue. Now the reason why I'm leaving these ROMs in, by the way, is just because it's more convenient for holding on to them. I'm going to leave the additional chips that I took out of this, these ones here, in a little baggie inside the computer so I don't misplace them. Right, okay, so theoretically we should have a working computer now. Oh, except I need to reconnect the video ROM board here. Here we go. Okay, now we're talking. So we're on 1.2.0 and I think the disk image that I have on this is actually 1.2.1 or something like that. So we're gonna do AppleSoft Basic and we're gonna let this boot. This should still be, yep, that 1.2.1 is still on there, so we can do the firmware update. There's the clock driver installed. Clock's not set, of course, because I just put the battery in. So there's a file there, romxce.firm. And according to the manual, it's telling us that we need to update the firmware using romxce.firm. And I think we can actually run. Can I run this? Can I run romxce.firm? Not firm, disk. I should bring us the menu, I think. Oh, that key is misbehaving. Let's see what happens. Use with caution. Okay, yeah, that's right. So that just loaded the new firmware, but we need to actually reboot this thing and get into the original firmware. And then what you do is we're gonna add a new disk image. So we hit U for upload image from disk. So U. And there's the firmware. Arrows to select. enter to confirm, return to confirm, select bank to program. Well, this is the firmware. Are you sure you want to modify the firmware? Yes. So we're going to have the latest version. So it's loading it off the floppy disk. And this is cool. It's all happening directly from the ROM before the system's even booted, which is just freaking cool. Okay, and then I guess it has restarted itself because now it says 1.2.1, and we'll just hit X to kind of exit out of here. And what's going to try to load the disk image. I'm going to hit or power cycle the computer, and we should have the latest firmware. There it is. 1.2.1 successfully updated the firmware. All right, let's see if anything's different on here. So Apple One emulation, I forgot which key it is. Oh yeah, so we're still running in the color mode there, which means, yep, there we go. So that's the way the emulation works, I suppose. What's new is we have memory test utility. So let's hit A. All right, so this is a cool little utility that I haven't seen before. Used to test RAM on Apple II or II Plus system memory, bank switch memory on a Saturn card. So it supports this Saturn card. Your system info, Apple II, II Plus, at Saturn in slot 0, and a total RAM of 176K with 8 extended banks. So I'm gonna test the bank switched memory B, and I'm looking if any LEDs are on the little card here. I don't see any, but I'm assuming maybe the switch is set to have them off or something. Or I guess it already tested really quick and it's done. So now it's just running through all the various banks and stuff. And test pass. 0 page, first 48K. Let's S switch to Saturn. Okay, so now we do bank switched memory. That couldn't have tested all the memory just that fast, could it? All right, so Saturn memory, select bank select 1. Okay, I can use the arrow keys to select different banks up to 7. So 1 through 7. Oh, you know what? I can see that the lights are on here on the little card there now. Oh yeah, there they go. Cool. So this tests the extra banks, and then I can use the arrow keys to switch or select the other banks on the Saturn card. So if you have an original Saturn card, which is a real card, it's just much bigger, then you can go through the banks. And I'm noticing here, as I select the different banks, the LEDs are kind of changing on the card. So that's working. So this thing has a total of 170 whatever K. I don't know what can actually use that. Maybe Apple Works? I'm not sure, but there are programs that support. This works fundamentally in a very different way than the 128K of RAM on an Apple IIe or a 2C. And the reason why is because that banking actually switches out all of the RAM, not just a little chunk of it up at the top that has various pages. It can actually take the entire 64K memory space and swap it over to an auxiliary set of RAM. And that's how that 128K works. It's actually like 2 clones of the Apple memory map. And that's how you can get double high res and stuff like that, is because you actually have 2 high res buffers sitting next to each other, and the graphics hardware interleaves that when it's displaying it on screen. This works in a different way, but I assume software is designed to use this Saturn card. Okay, so I'm back at the ROM X menu, and it looks like we can just boot straight into ProDOS, or it actually looks like Choplifter's on here too. So I'm just gonna demonstrate that this works by removing the floppy card there, turn this on, and let's go to Choplifter. We hit C, and we should get Choplifter. And there it is. It loaded straight out of ROM. That is freaking awesome. I don't know how to play this without a joystick, and I don't have a joystick plugged in. Can you play Choplifter without a joystick? I am not sure. But I don't know what kind of trickery is happening to allow software to run right out of the ROM. That is awesome though. So we have a version of ProDOS that loads very quickly straight out of ROM. And the cool thing about this is if we put the disk controller back in, just noticing there's some writing on the back here. I don't remember putting that on there, but I don't remember where this card came from either. That's what happens when you work on a lot of computers between this and whatever I work on now, or like what we're doing right here. So I can load ProDOS, so we hit D, very quick. That did not load off the disk, but I assume, okay, catalog 6, I forgot how to drive 6. Does that do it? Yeah, there we go. So I don't know what slot like the fake ProDOS is running out of, but now I've selected slot 6. We're looking at what's actually on the floppy disk here, plugged into this floppy drive controller, even though we're booted off the ROM X ROM, the ProDOS ROM that's in here. So let's try a couple of these things here. So let's run text demo plus. Oops, that did not work. It's hard to use this thing with the bad L key and the I key as well. Okay, so that is the stock ROM. Press any key to change the text ROM or use the arrow keys. Right. So lowercase font using the VidX font, you notice how it shifts everything up a little bit, and that's because of the support for those descenders, like on the lowercase y and stuff like that. So there's a way, obviously, maybe with a soft switch somewhere in memory, like you poke a value, it allows you to pick which font you're going to be using through the character ROM. Okay, and then now we have this lowercase font, ZROM Bob Brown. And the VidX font is very similar to the uppercase of the Apple II. It looks like it's exactly the same, in fact. A couple things are slightly shifted around, other than everything's moved up a line. But this one, there are some more differences. Look at the letter B. It has little like extra accents on it. The D is also more rounded. These are the uppercase characters I'm talking about, by the way. The VidX font, lowercase d, has like a round part of the body. And on this one, it is more squared off. And then we have another Apple lowercase ROM from Dan Paymar. And none of these seem to be exact copies of what Apple did themselves on the 2E and the 2C, though, which is interesting. And then we have this font, Blippo Black, which has like, it's a serifed font, so it's all frilly and stuff. It's not very clear. I would say this is a lot harder to read than the other Apple fonts. And then we have the, computer font here of the 80s, Byte, the DOS toolkit. Yeah, it's all boop, 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 like the futuristic font. And then we have this colossal double pixel wide, except for like the W and the M. And that's right, the fonts that are used in the Apple II aren't wide enough. They're lacking 1 pixel width to allow for proper double width fonts, like you can do on Commodores, for instance. So M and W basically have to give up one of the double pixel wide risers there, and you just get a single pixel, which looks kind of funny, actually. And then we have this one, not very readable, called Count. And we have Flow. Flow is pretty readable. Now again, the problem is with the number of pixels wide is look at the uppercase M and W. You have a loss of like the whole middle section. It's kind of like you took the H and you just moved the little part that links the sides together, and you moved it up to the top. But the font is overall pretty readable. And the interesting thing is, if you had a low-res TV, this font would be a lot better than the single pixel font might be. It's too bad they did some silly stuff, like the F and the E have like these like curled over tops. I don't know why they're doing that. And then we have this one, Georgie, it looks like. It's very Middle Ages looking. It's supposed to be all kind of old school. And there's the katakana font. So this is the J+ ROM, what we saw before. So I guess the way you're able to type stuff in katakana is inverse text, and that must be what Control-T does. I think I forgot that, but Control-T must do inverted text, and that gives us access to that katakana character set that's there. And then there's Outline, which is pretty terrible looking. It doesn't look very readable at all. Pig font, okay. It's kind of cool. There's like some missing pixels here and there on purpose, obviously. Oh, and then we have slant, so we have italics. In a way, it would be kind of cool if you had a font that had all normal characters, normal and inverse, and then the flashing text was the slant, or maybe the inverted text was the slant. And then that way you could have slanted text and normal text on the screen at the same time. That'd be kind of fun. You could do a custom font. I think we're gonna have fonts 0 through F, so 16 total. And this one, Stop. Very futuristic again. And yep, that is the last one there. So there we go. That allows us to see all the different fonts, and we can select one. Let's pick one that's kind of readable. How about that one there? So if I can type correctly here, I want to see what this basic program is doing. I'm assuming it's going to be poking. So, okay, there it is. Line 340. Poke 785, C plus 16. ROM set text bank is FB1N. Oh, okay. You know what? Actually, it looks like it's using a little assembly language program because it says call 768. So there's probably some data statements at the end that somehow is doing some stuff. Yeah, there's some data statements there. There we go. I just changed the font. So poke 785, 2. So I picked like font number 2 plus 16 and call 768, which runs that little assembly language program, which is still in memory because I didn't reboot the computer or anything like that. And we can do this again. So if we do this and we change to font like 8, I don't know what that is, and we do this again, there we go. We're back to that wider font. There is a way to do it in your own little programs. You just have to load this little basic program or look at the assembly language here of what that is doing right there, 820 and 830. And then you can switch the fonts on demand if you have a ROM X and you want to have some cool font action. Right, so we have set speed, and I have a feeling set speed has to do with the zip chip. And I think I saw in the manual, this allows like some configuration of the zip chip in the ROM menu. So you could have like different ROM images that do different things and run at different speeds. That's helpful if you have a zip chip, because the problem is with the Apple II is since there is no timer hardware on board, it relies on counting cycles. If you actually have an accelerator, then things run way too fast. So set speed, I'm assuming there's nothing really to do here because we don't have a zip chip in here. The I key is barely working at this point. What does this even do here? I'm not 100% sure what this does actually, but I'm assuming this has to do with zip chip speed as to say it, but that's my assumption. Now, one of the things that this ROM does, and on the various versions, if you set the clock, I have to look around the camera here, weekday. So we are Thursday, so that's 5. Year is 24. Month 11. 21. Hour, yes, it's late at night right now, so it's 23:13. Seconds unimportant. Press any key to set clock. There's the day. So what's cool is the clock driver is loaded automatically. Therefore, or I don't know if it's how automatic it is, but if we save something, like I think we have a little program in memory. Okay, yep, the I key has completely stopped working. So let's just save test. I think whatever's in memory here is going to be saved onto this disk image, and theoretically the timestamp should be correct with the current date and time. There we go. If we do cat, whoops, cat at the bottom, test 20 January. I thought I set the date correctly, not the 20th of January. Is this the clock here still? So 5:24. Okay, so it's definitely set correctly. November 21st. Time is correct. Year is correct. Everything is correct here. We hit enter and we save test 2. Whoops. Test 2. Boy, if I can just type correctly today. Is there a bug here? I don't know. Let's see what happens because of that. But it's not the right date and time there a second ago. Unless like, no, that worked. Okay, so I must have done it wrong. No, it's still wrong. It's the 21st of November. And absolutely, without a doubt, it showed that correctly. I don't know if this has a timestamp as well. If we do catalog, it's like a wider thing. Yeah, there are timestamps there. Okay, wait a second. Test 2 basic, 20 November 2024, but then it has the correct time and date, 21st of November 24. I don't get what's going on there. Someone watching can understand, like, is one a modified time and one like the created time? But why is the created time wrong? They should be the same. Weird, right? So we power cycle this. I think the time and date is listed on this screen here. No, I don't see the time and date on here actually. And I can't push the I button, which I think, oh, there it actually came up. Oh, what's up with the date there? It was freaking out. All right, well, Jeff, are you watching this video? You probably are. I'm positive that you are. Did you see the date freaking out there for a second? It's correct now, but let's go back to I. Yeah, it looks okay, but it absolutely was totally freaking out there. So we'll reboot this again. Okay, I'm hitting escape. Can we get the I to work? There, it's fine now, but it was completely jittery, and I'm assuming maybe that's what was happening in ProDOS. It was accessing it, and it was doing that kind of weird thing. So, I don't know, kind of strange. Not sure what's going on there. Anyhow, I think that's all there is to really show with this. It goes without saying that you can load your own ROMs, you can make modified ROMs, and you can load them into this list. Theoretically, like on the Apple IIc, there are various different ROM versions. You can get ones with like boot menus of their own and stuff like that. So you could load different ones into here. I don't know if the Apple IIc ROMs are compatible between like the 2E and the 2C, and you could try, you know, switching between them and stuff like that. Obviously, with the Apple II Plus here, an Apple II Plus and an original 2 are no different than the ROMs that are installed. And you could load the very earliest Apple II ROMs into an Apple II Plus using the ROM X here. And then what would happen is when it went to boot up, you'd see this boot menu for a second, and then you would just get a machine language monitor. And that's the way it worked. It didn't automatically drop into BASIC. And actually, look right here, the integer BASIC with non-auto start. So this is it. This is the original Apple II ROM, number 5 here. So if we go to S, and I'm going to select 5 as the default, which is the non-auto start ROM. And then I want to change the text mode. Change it to, what is it, 5? I forgot which is the font that we were using, that double wide font. And let's see right here. Nope, that's that terrible font I don't like. There we go. I think that was the one that I was using. Okay, so now if we turn the computer off, and we turn this on, it's counting down right now. Okay, well that's kind of funny. So in the original version of this ROM, you would get garbage because the screen would not be initialized. This is how the Apple II worked when you first got it. Not with this font, of course. You hit Shift B or Control B. Yes, there we go. And now we're in integer BASIC. This is Woz's BASIC that he wrote himself, integer BASIC. AppleSoft BASIC, of course, is like more like Microsoft BASIC. Microsoft, I think, wrote it, I think. Anyways, and more compatibility with programs written for other computers, which I think is the main reason for AppleSoft BASIC. Now, it goes without saying that it's quite possible to add other ROMs to this. So a ROM that would be very possible to use here would be the Apple II Dead Test ROM that's on my GitHub repo that my friend David Giller wrote. And it does very comprehensive March testing of the first 48K of memory on these machines, and plus a really good stress test because you can let it run indefinitely. And it would be very doable to load that into this little ROM board here. The only thing I have to think about how to do is I have to transfer the ROM image. I guess I have to transfer it onto a ProDOS disk because we have a booting version of it, but it's DOS 3.3, so I don't think I can do that. All right, so here's the latest release. So it's this .bin file. So the disk file is a DOS 3.3 disk, as I mentioned. So we just download this file. And I have the program CiderPress on my lab computer here. So we can open up the ROM CE disk image here, and I should be able to copy that bin file. And I think if I put Apple II dead.bin on here, I can never remember how to use this. Add file. Okay, there it is. So Apple II dead.bin. Now the problem is the file type is wrong. So let's see about this one. Edit attributes. So this is a firmware files. Bin is file type 6. So let's change the dead test one. Edit attribute. Bin file type 6. And I think that should do it. So we're going to power cycle the computer. We'll hit escape. Upload image. Searching the disk. Suitable files for upload. All right, looking at the documentation, the problem is the ROM must be binary type, which I already did, but the file on disk for a 32K ROM is exactly this many bytes. And the file I copied on is 2K. And as far as I'm aware, the ROM size on the Apple II Plus is 12. So I don't know what it's talking about, like 32K ROM. And this says for 16K ROM, it must be this many bytes. It's okay, so it's saying here to use CiderPress, but then it's not a 16K ROM file, it's not a 32K ROM file, it's a 2K ROM file because it only replaces the F8 ROM. And yeah, it's saying that these ROM images that this thing uses are distributed either as 32K or 16K ROM images, and it does some kind of like bank switching or whatever for the 32K ones. And I guess there's some kind of metadata, so you can't just take a bin file and load this straight into here. And here it says, yeah, the stop ROMs are technically 12K, 6 times 2K ROMs. So over here on the website, it looks like there are some ROM images available here. Looks like there is this cool ROM here called the MG ROM, which adds extra support. Enhanced reset. Single reset does normal reset, but 2 quick resets in succession will restart the machine. 3 or more resets will bring up the boot menu. That's cool. Also allows booting SmartPort devices if you have a SmartPort compatible disk card or drive card in here. Enhanced keyboard input. So it lets you press escape and then a character to get characters you don't normally have access to, like the brackets and the curly brackets, which the font is there, like the character is there in the font, but you just don't have a way to type those on this Apple II keyboard. All right, well, anyhow, it's obviously possible to get the dead test ROM into a version that would work on this. I just don't know quite how to do it, and unfortunately, it's almost midnight now, and I need to finish this video up here. These are super mini mail calls. I don't have time to really get in depth into things, but I'm sure Jeff is watching, is gonna put a little comment down below and mention like the correct methodology for doing this. And Jeff, I guess my question to you, which I'll send you an email about this as well, is there updatable firmware for the original ROM X here? Obviously, like I said, I quickly found the firmware for this newer version, but this one, I'm not quite sure about it. And then the other thing we saw is that weird clock glitch that was going on there, causing potentially the ProDOS clock information to be wrong. I'm just not sure what's happening there exactly. So if you can give me some tips or point me to the right place so I can figure out how to turn the dead test ROM into a ROM that will work with this, then definitely let me know. I think that I'd be pretty interested to try that, especially because like this particular computer here, I have no idea if this thing is working reliably. It seems to be fine at this point, but to be honest, I haven't turned this computer on in a number of years, so I've never run the dead test ROM, especially long term with the lid on and this thing getting nice and hot, just to see if this Apple II does work or not. So I have to say thanks to Jeff and Dean for creating the ROM X, and the folks at Reactive Micro for sending this over to me for checking it out. And that Saturn card is a really cool little small implementation. I do have to say that I think there are other Saturn clones available on eBay as well. I think I have a Saturn clone as well, and it's in my box of Apple II cards, and I got it from eBay, and it's made with dip parts. And I recall it being pretty inexpensive. I think it uses like two 64K SRAM chips. Maybe I'm mistaken though. Maybe it's only a 64K card. I don't quite remember. It's been a while since I've used it. And to be honest, the language card is all I ever really need to use on Apple II Pluses. I don't have any software that I use, at least, that uses the extra RAM that would be available on a Saturn card. But the fact is, a Saturn card is fully backwards compatible with the language card. Therefore, anything that requires 64K, like say Oregon Trail, you can run that without a problem with this card installed that Jeff sent over. So anyways, as I was saying, thanks very much, Jeff, for sending this stuff over. And sorry it took me so long to get to the original ROM X, but hey, at least we know it works. And I'm glad to know that my original 2 Plus that I fixed years ago is still working except for these keys. So I'm going to keep this thing out, and I'm going to replace those key switches while the lid is off this thing and stuff like that. So I'll desolder and replace those key switches so I can use this machine anytime I need in future without having any issues. Right now in my office, set up to actually use is my Apple II Plus clone, the one that has a numeric keypad that I worked on a while ago that had all sorts of faults, like due to bad contacts, and oh, it had shorts under the chips. That's right. I'll link to those videos down below if you haven't seen those as well. And I'm pretty sure that I tried this original ROM X in that machine and it did not work, and that's just because of the way that the F11, F12, those 2 chips this plugs into, it's just not quite compatible on that particular system. So that's going to be it for this mail call episode. It's just a single item thing this time, but as you can see, it took me quite a while to dig into this, but hey, at least I got one of the packages down from this huge box of stuff here, and I guess I'll just keep going. So if you have any experience using this thing and you can tell me about some of the awesome things that your ROM X is configured to do, like some of the images you're using to boot straight into when you first turn on your computer, definitely let me know. I know lots of folks out there in the Apple II world are using these, and I'd love to know about some of the cool ways you've configured them to load software automatically without any disks and stuff like that. I just think that that's a really cool feature and a very cool value add. Just being able to turn on a computer and go straight into your favorite game, for instance, without even having to plug anything into the machine or do anything with a disk or stuff like that. Anyhow, if you like this video, I appreciate a thumbs up, subscribe, all the usual YouTube junk. Thanks to my supporters. Names are scrolling beside the screen. They make it possible to do this full time. There's links down below. You can become a supporter on YouTube memberships and Patreon. And that is going to be that. So stay healthy, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.